tempting heat. In the heart of the ancient city of Deloria, where cobblestone streets wove through towering ivy-clad buildings, a warm golden sun dipped toward the horizon. It was on such an evening that Aria, a young and passionate artisan, found herself at the threshold of her most alluring creation yet. Aria's shop was a quaint, ivy-covered atelier nestled between two grand buildings. It was filled with the rich scents of freshly turned clay and the glimmering allure of her handcrafted ceramics. Yet tonight, as the shadows lengthened and the air grew thick with the heat of summer, Aria was distracted by more than just her art. The city buzzed with a sultry promise, a heat that seemed to whisper through the very stones of Deloria. For weeks, Aria had been working on a set of exquisite, fiery red vases. They were not just any vases. They were crafted with a rare and ancient glaze that shimmered with a lustrous, almost hypnotic quality. The moment they were finished, the vases seemed to pulse with an inner warmth that captivated anyone who gazed upon them. Aria was fascinated by their allure, yet she couldn't quite understand the magnetic pull they seemed to have. As night fell, the first visitors arrived, drawn by the irresistible glow of Aria's creations. Among them was a tall, enigmatic figure draped in a cloak of deep crimson. His name was Kael, a traveler whose eyes held the deep, dark secrets of countless adventures. He entered the shop with an air of quiet confidence and a knowing smile. Aria's gaze met Kael's, and a shiver of recognition passed through her. There was something about him that stirred a strange, unfamiliar longing within her. He approached the vases with an intense, almost reverent curiosity, his fingers lightly grazing their surfaces. "These are extraordinary," Kael murmured, his voice rich and warm like the summer breeze. "I've never seen anything quite like them." Aria felt her cheeks flush as she stepped closer. "Thank you. I've poured my heart into them." Kael's eyes sparkled as he looked at her. "I can tell. There's something almost magical about them." As the night deepened, the shop became a haven of whispered secrets and stolen glances. Kael's presence was both invigorating and unsettling. The heat in the air seemed to intensify, wrapping around them like an invisible embrace. Aria could feel her pulse quicken every time Kael's gaze lingered on her. They spoke of many things, their conversation flowing effortlessly. Kael shared tales of distant lands and mysterious cultures, while Aria spoke of her dreams and passions. With each story, the heat between them grew more palpable, like a living thing that refused to be ignored. Suddenly, Kael's expression grew serious. "There's a legend," he began, his voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper, "about a fire that burns within every soul. A fire that, when ignited, can lead to the most profound desires and deepest connections." Aria's breath caught in her throat. "What happens if you find it?" Kael's eyes locked with hers, his gaze intense and consuming. "If you find it, you must be willing to embrace it. It's a heat that can either warm or consume." Aria's heart pounded as she felt the weight of his words. The air between them crackled with an electric tension. Kael took a step closer, his hand gently touching her arm. The heat of his touch was overwhelming, and Aria found herself drawn to him with an irresistible force. In a moment of daring vulnerability, Aria leaned in, her lips brushing against Kael's. The kiss was tender at first, but it quickly deepened, fueled by the intense heat that surged between them. The world outside ceased to exist as they lost themselves in each other. Kael's hands roamed over Aria's body, his touch igniting every nerve with a fiery intensity. The vases, their creation, and the source of this overwhelming attraction seemed to shimmer with a life of their own, casting a warm, golden light around them. Their passion became a symphony of heated breaths and fervent touches. The warmth of their bodies melded together, creating a perfect harmony of desire and connection. As they reached the peak of their intimacy, it was as if the very air around them had ignited into a blaze of pure, exhilarating heat. Afterward, as they lay entwined, the heat between them slowly began to ebb, leaving a lingering warmth that filled the room. Kael's arms held Aria close, their breaths coming in soft, contented sighs. "The fire within us," Kael whispered, "is a powerful thing, but when shared, it becomes something truly magnificent." Aria smiled, her heart swelling with a profound sense of fulfillment. "I've never felt anything like this." Kael's eyes softened as he gazed at her. "And neither have I. Sometimes, the most unexpected fires burn the brightest." As the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows, the city of Deloria awoke to a new day. But within the walls of Aria's shop, the echoes of a night filled with tempting heat lingered, leaving behind a memory that would burn brightly in their hearts forever. In the end, it was not just the vases that held the fiery allure of the night. It was the shared heat of two souls, kindled by a moment of irresistible passion that left an indelible mark on both Aria and Kael. As the golden rays of dawn filtered through the windows of Aria's atelier, the warmth of the previous night lingered in the air. Aria lay curled against Kael, their bodies entwined in a tangle of sheets and limbs. The intensity of their connection had left her breathless, yet deeply content. She couldn't help but feel as if something profound had shifted within her, a fire that had been ignited, impossible to extinguish. Kael stirred beside her, his hand gently tracing the curve of her back. "Morning has come too soon," he murmured, his voice still thick with the remnants of sleep. Aria smiled softly, pressing a kiss to his shoulder. "It feels like a dream." Kael turned to face her, his dark eyes holding a mixture of tenderness and something deeper, almost reverent. "Not a dream, Aria. A reality we created together." As he spoke, Aria felt a strange sensation in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the heat of the night before. It was as if Kael's words were a promise, one that extended far beyond the fleeting moments of passion they had shared. But there was also a part of her that wondered what would happen next. Kael was a traveller, a man of the world. Would he stay in Deloria, or was he destined to leave, taking the memory of their night together with him? Kael seemed to sense her thoughts. He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing across her cheek. "I have roamed many lands, seen many wonders, but nothing has captivated me as you have." Aria's heart skipped a beat. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Kael continued, his voice steady, "that I'm not ready to leave Deloria. Not yet. There's something here, something between us, that I need to explore." The uncertainty that had gnawed at Aria's heart began to dissipate, replaced by a cautious hope. "I want that too," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Kael smiled, a slow, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Then let's see where this fire takes us." For the next few days, Aria and Kael became inseparable. They spent their mornings wandering the sunlit streets of Deloria, exploring its hidden corners and forgotten alleys. Kael introduced Aria to a world she had never known, filled with ancient stories and forgotten treasures. In return, Aria shared her passion for art, taking Kael to her favourite spots for inspiration, places where the world seemed to come alive with colour and light. But as they delved deeper into each other's worlds, the heat that had sparked between them only grew stronger. It was a constant, ever-present force, simmering beneath the surface of their every interaction. Each touch, each glance, was charged with an electric energy that neither could ignore. One evening, as they sat by the river that ran through the heart of Deloria, Kael turned to Aria, his expression serious. "There's something I haven't told you," he began, his voice tinged with a hint of hesitation. Aria's heart quickened. "What is it?" Kael took a deep breath, as if steeling himself. "The vases you created, they're more than just beautiful works of art. They hold a power, one that I've encountered before in my travels." Aria frowned, confusion clouding her features. "What kind of power?" "The kind that can awaken desires, amplify emotions, and even alter reality," Kael explained. "It's a rare and ancient magic, one that's been lost to time. But somehow, you've tapped into it." Aria's mind raced, trying to process what Kael was saying. "Are you saying that the vases, they're the reason we?" Kael nodded. "I believe so. The heat between us, the intensity of our connection. It's not just chemistry, it's something more." Aria stared at the river, its waters shimmering in the fading light. "But I didn't intend for this to happen. I didn't even know such magic existed." Kael placed a hand on hers, his touch grounding her. "I know, and that's what makes it even more extraordinary. You've unlocked something powerful, something that many have sought for centuries." A sense of awe and fear washed over Aria. She had always known that her art held a certain allure, but this was beyond anything she could have imagined. "What do we do now?" Kael's gaze was steady, filled with a determination that matched the heat within her. "We embrace it, together. We learn to control it, to harness its power. and in doing so, we discover what else lies within us. Aria looked into Kael's eyes, seeing not just a lover, but a partner, someone who was ready to stand by her side no matter what challenges lay ahead. The fear that had gripped her heart began to loosen its hold, replaced by a fierce resolve. "Then let's do it," she said, her voice firm. "Let's see where this fire leads." And so, they embarked on a journey unlike any other, one filled with passion, discovery, and the intoxicating heat of a magic that bound them together in ways they had yet to fully understand. As they explored the depths of their connection, the fire between them burned brighter, hotter, pushing them to new heights of desire and intimacy. But with great power came great responsibility. The heat they had unleashed had the potential to consume them, if not carefully controlled. They had to learn to balance their passion with wisdom, to channel their desires in ways that would strengthen their bond rather than destroy it. Together, they faced challenges and temptations, each more intense than the last. But through it all, they held on to the fire that had brought them together, knowing that it was both their greatest strength and their greatest test. As they stood on the threshold of an uncertain future, Aria and Kael knew one thing for sure. The heat between them was a force to be reckoned with. It was a fire that could light the way through even the darkest of nights. A fire that would continue to burn as long as they had the courage to embrace it. And so, with their hearts and souls entwined, they stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, bound by the tempting heat that had drawn them together, and kept them connected for all the days to come. As Aria and Kael ventured deeper into their newfound connection, the city of Deloria seemed to change around them. The streets they once knew so well now felt charged and undercurrent, as if the very air crackled with the magic. Each day brought new surprises, and with every shared moment, their bond grew stronger, more complex, and undeniably powerful. Aria noticed subtle changes in herself. Her senses were heightened, colours appeared more vivid, sounds more resonant, and even the simplest of touches sent shivers down her spine. It was as if the world had opened up, revealing layers of beauty and intensity she had never known existed. But with this newfound awareness came a sense of responsibility, a need to understand the force that would intertwine their lives. Kael, too, was undergoing a transformation. His once restless spirit, always eager to move on to the next adventure, found itself anchored in a way he had never experienced before. Deloria, and Aria within it, had become his new centre, a place where the wanderer in him could finally rest and continue to explore in ways he had never imagined. One evening, as they sat by the fire in Aria's atelier, surrounded by the warmth of flickering flames and the soft glow of her ceramic creations, Kael spoke of his past. He told Aria about his travels, the lands he had seen, and the mysteries he had encountered. But there was one story that seemed to resonate more deeply than the others, a story of a hidden realm, long forgotten by the world, where magic flowed as freely as the rivers and the heat of desire was as tangible as the air they breathed. "It's called the Ember Vale," Kael began, his voice low and reverent, "a place where the boundaries between the physical and the ethereal blur. It's said that those who find it are granted a gift, a power that amplifies their deepest desires and strengthens the bonds they cherish most. But the veil is not without its dangers. Many who seek it are consumed by the very fire they wish to harness." Aria listened intently, her heart beating faster with each word. Do you think what we've discovered here is connected to the Ember Vale?" Kael nodded slowly, his gaze thoughtful. "I believe it is. The vases you crafted, they hold the essence of that place. Somehow, you've tapped into its magic without even knowing it." A thrill of fear and excitement shot through Aria. "Then we have to find it. We have to understand what we've unleashed." Kael smiled at her, his expression a mix of admiration and concern. "You're braver than most, Aria. But if we go, we must be prepared for whatever we find. The veil has a way of testing those who enter, revealing their true selves in ways that can be both enlightening and terrifying." Aria took his hand, feeling the heat of his skin against hers. "I'm ready, Kael. Whatever we face, we'll face it together." With their decision made, the days that followed were filled with preparation. They gathered supplies, consulted ancient texts, and sought out the wisdom of those who knew of the veil's existence. The journey ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but Aria and Kael were united in their resolve. The fire between them had become a guiding light, and they were determined to follow it, wherever it led. The morning of their departure dawned clear and bright, the sky a brilliant canvas of pink and gold. Aria stood at the entrance of her atelier, her heart heavy with anticipation. She cast one last glance at the vases that had sparked this incredible journey, their fiery glow a reminder of the power they held. Then, with Kael by her side, she stepped into the streets of Deloria, leaving behind the familiar world she had known for so long. Their journey took them beyond the city's borders, through dense forests and over rugged mountains. The further they traveled, the more the landscape seemed to shift, as if guiding them toward a destination that lay just beyond the edge of their understanding. Each night, as they camped under the stars, the heat between them grew more intense, their connection deepening in ways that words could not capture. But as they drew closer to the Ember Vale, the challenges began to manifest. The air grew thicker, the nights hotter, and strange, almost dreamlike visions began to haunt their sleep. Aria found herself waking in the middle of the night, her body slick with sweat, her heart racing from dreams filled with fire and shadow. Kael, too, was affected, his usually calm demeanor giving way to a restless energy that neither of them could explain. One night, as they lay beside the fire, Kael turned to Aria, his eyes shadowed with concern. "The veil is testing us," he said quietly. "It's trying to see if we're worthy of its power." Aria shivered, despite the warmth of the flames. "What do we do?" "We face it," Kael replied, his voice steady. "We face whatever it throws at us together. We can't let it drive us apart." But as the days wore on, the heat between them became almost unbearable. It was no longer just a physical sensation. It was a force pulsing between them, drawing them together and pushing them apart in equal measure. The veil seemed to be amplifying their desires, making them more intense, more all-consuming. It was both exhilarating and terrifying, a test of their resolve and their love. Finally, after what felt like weeks of travel, they arrived at the edge of the Ember Vale. The air was thick with heat, the ground beneath their feet warm to the touch. Before them lay a vast, shimmering landscape, bathed in an ethereal, golden light. The Vale was unlike anything they had ever seen, a place where reality seemed to twist and bend, where the very air hummed with power. Aria felt a surge of emotion, a mix of awe and fear. "This is it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Kael squeezed her hand, his grip strong and reassuring. "Are you ready?" Aria nodded, though her heart was pounding in her chest. "I am." Together, they stepped into the Ember Vale, the heat wrapping around them like a living thing. As they walked, the landscape shifted and changed, revealing glimpses of their deepest desires and darkest fears. The ground beneath their feet seemed to pulse with energy, each step resonating with the beat of their hearts. But the Vale was not just a place of beauty and power, it was also a place of trial. As they ventured deeper, the heat became almost unbearable, their desires growing more intense, more difficult to control. Visions filled their minds, images of what they wanted most, what they feared most. The Vale was testing them, pushing them to their limits, forcing them to confront the fire within. At the heart of the Vale, they found what they had been seeking: a pool of molten gold, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly light. It was the source of the Vale's power, the very essence of the magic that had drawn them here. Aria and Kael stood at the edge of the pool, their bodies slick with sweat, their minds filled with the intensity of the moment. They had come so far, faced so much, but now they stood on the brink of something even greater. "This is it," Kael murmured, his voice filled with awe. "The fire within us, the power we've been seeking, it's all here." Aria reached out, her fingers just inches from the molten surface. "What do we do now?" Kael placed his hand over hers, their fingers intertwining. "We embrace it. Together." With a deep breath, they plunged their hands into the pool, the molten gold wrapping around their fingers like liquid fire. The heat was overwhelming, searing through their bodies, but instead of pain, they felt a surge of power, a connection that went beyond anything they had ever known. The fire within them blazed to life, their desires and emotions intertwining with the magic of the veil. It was a union of souls, a merging of power and passion that transcended the physical, reaching into the very core of who they were. As they stood there hand in hand, the fire within them reached its peak, a blinding, all-consuming light that filled the veil and beyond. It was a moment of pure, unbridled power, a moment that would define them for the rest of their lives. When the light finally faded, Aria and Kael found themselves standing at the edge of the pool, their hands still clasped together. The heat was gone, replaced by a deep, abiding warmth that filled their bodies and souls. They had passed the test, embraced the fire, and emerged stronger, more united than ever before. The Ember Veil had given them a gift, a power that would shape their future, a bond that would withstand any challenge. As they made their way back through the veil, the landscape shifting once more to reveal the path home, they knew that their journey was far from over. The fire within them would continue to burn, a guiding light through the darkness, a testament to the strength of their love. And as they stepped back into the world beyond the veil, Aria and Kael knew that they were no longer the same. They had been transformed, their souls entwined in a dance of fire and desire that would carry them through all the days to come. The tempting heat that had drawn them together had become a part of them, a force that would shape their destiny in ways they had yet to discover. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, their hearts united by the fire within. And as they walked hand in hand into the future, they knew that the heat between them would continue to burn, an eternal flame that would light their way through even the darkest of nights.